I never used to believe in the kind of things you read about in paranormal books or hear from some guy's uncle about ghosts in old houses. My life was ordinary and I liked it that way. But everything changed the year I started working the night shift at a regional distribution warehouse just outside town. It was a sprawling building, bigger than a football field, with high ceilings and long, echoing aisles stacked to the top with pallets of boxed goods. The place always smelled faintly of cardboard, oil from the forklifts, and that stale chill that comes from concrete floors holding onto the cold. During the day it was busy, people yelling, forklifts beeping, radios blaring. At night, though, it was just me and maybe one or two others, depending on the schedule. That's when the place felt wrong. My shift usually started around 10 p.m. and went to 6 in the morning. I'd clock in, grab the nightly manifest, and then go about scanning shipments and making sure everything was staged for the trucks that would arrive before dawn. It was simple work, boring even, but paid better than anything else I could find. The first couple weeks went by without issue. Sure, I'd get spooked when a pallet would creak in the distance or when the HVAC would kick on, echoing like footsteps. Everyone joked about the warehouse being haunted. But I figured it was just the kind of thing bored night shift workers say to entertain themselves. One night, though, about 3 weeks in, I had my first encounter with something I still can't explain. It was just after midnight and I was in aisle 17, one of the longer aisles where the lights never seemed to fully reach the end. I had just scanned a pallet of bottled water when I heard it. A low, dragging sound like someone pulling a heavy box across the concrete. I froze, listening. The sound stopped. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. The aisles carried echoes weirdly, so it could have been anywhere. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe one of the other workers was moving something. I went back to scanning. Not even 30 seconds later, I heard it again, this time behind me. A slow, scraping pull. I spun around with my scanner light raised, but the aisle was empty, just stacks of shrink-wrapped goods and the hum of the fluorescent lights. I walked a few feet down, peering between pallets, but there was no one. I laughed nervously to myself, muttering, "All right, imagination, chill out." That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The weeks went on, and the noises became more frequent. Sometimes it was the dragging sound. Other times it was a metallic clatter, like a wrench being dropped, though no tools were ever left out. I mentioned it to one of my coworkers, Luis, during a break. He gave me this look, half amused and half serious. "Don't mess with aisle 17, man," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. He took a drag from his cigarette, eyes narrowing. "Everyone hears stuff down there. Last year, a temp quit mid-shift. Said he saw someone standing at the far end just watching him. When he went to check, no one was there." I laughed it off, but his tone wasn't joking. A month into the job, I stopped laughing. That night was particularly quiet. Only 2 of us were scheduled, me and a guy named Carl who mostly stayed in the loading dock area. I was once again stuck in aisle 17 scanning boxes. Around 2 a.m., I felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. My skin prickled and the hair on my arms stood up. I turned slowly, sweeping my scanner light down the aisle. That's when I saw it. At the very end of the aisle, far back where the overhead light had burnt out months ago, there was a figure. At first I thought it was Carl, but then I realized whoever it was wasn't moving. Just standing perfectly still, shadowy but tall. "Carl?" I called out, my voice echoing. No answer. I blinked, and just like that, the figure was gone. I practically jogged down to the end, scanning the cross aisles left and right. Nothing. I even radioed Carl. He responded groggily, clearly still in the dock area. My stomach dropped. That's when I decided maybe the others were right about this place, but I kept working. I needed the paycheck. The experiences escalated quickly after that. One time I left my handheld scanner on a pallet while I moved some boxes. When I turned back, the scanner was gone. I searched for nearly 20 minutes thinking I'd misplaced it, until I found it balanced neatly on top of a tower of boxes 12 feet high. There was no ladder around. Another night I heard whispering, actual words though too faint to understand. It sounded like 2 people speaking low and fast, voices overlapping. It came from the shelving right beside me. When I stepped closer, it stopped. I tried telling myself I was sleep-deprived, hallucinating, but then came the night that nearly made me quit. It was around 3 a.m., dead quiet. I was walking toward the break room when the entire warehouse went dark. Every light, every buzzing fixture, gone. I froze, clutching my scanner, which thankfully had a small flashlight. The silence was suffocating. Then, footsteps. They were slow, deliberate. Coming from aisle 17, I told myself it was Carl, but my gut screamed otherwise. The steps grew louder, closer, echoing in the pitch black. I backed up, fumbling for my radio, but it was dead, just static. I shined my scanner light down the aisle, and there it was again. The figure. Only this time it wasn't just standing. It was walking toward me, slow but steady. I shouted, "Stop!" "Who's there?" The figure didn't stop. I bolted, sprinting through the maze of aisles, my breath ragged. I didn't stop until I burst into the dock area, where Carl was half asleep in a chair, his phone in hand. The lights flickered back on. "What the hell, man?" he mumbled as I stood there shaking. I didn't know what to say. The next morning, I told my supervisor I wouldn't work alone in that warehouse again. They laughed it off, said I was just tired, but I know what I saw. To this day, I can still picture it. The tall shadow, featureless yet solid, moving toward me in the dark. And the worst part? It felt like it knew me. Like it had been watching from the beginning, waiting. I quit the job a month later. But some nights, when I wake up at 3 a.m. to grab a drink or use the bathroom, I swear I hear that same dragging sound, somewhere faintly, like it followed me home. And I'll never forget aisle 17 because sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still see that figure standing there in the dark, just waiting for me to notice it again. When I was 21, I got a job at a small-town hospital. I wasn't a nurse or anything glamorous. I worked as a security guard on the night shift. It sounded easy enough when I signed up. Walk the halls, check doors, keep drunks from stumbling in from the ER waiting room. That's what I thought it would be. What I didn't know was that hospitals at night are some of the creepiest places on earth. They're not like how people imagine, bright and bustling. After visiting hours end and the wards go quiet, it's like stepping into another world. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, machines beep occasionally, and sometimes you hear whispers when you know damn well there's nobody around. I worked in a mid-sized building, about 6 floors, with 2 main wings. During the day, hundreds of people came and went. But overnight, only a skeleton crew was on duty. A couple nurses per floor, 1 or 2 doctors, and me. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and most of that time was spent walking the same boring loops through corridors that all looked the same. The first month wasn't bad. I got used to the eerie silence and the occasional odd patient who would try to sneak off the ward. But as time went on, I started to notice things I couldn't explain. It began in the basement. The basement of the hospital housed the old records room, long since digitized, so hardly anyone ever went down there. But part of my rounds required me to check the stairwell doors and make sure everything was locked up. The basement was always cold, colder than the rest of the building, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones. One night, as I pushed the stairwell door open, I heard something. It was faint but unmistakable, the sound of a woman humming. A slow, sad tune. I froze listening. The humming echoed up the concrete stairwell, floating from below. I called out, "Hello? Anyone down there?" The humming stopped. I waited a good 30 seconds, then shook it off. Maybe a nurse had gone down there. But when I checked the log later, no one had swiped in. After that, I started dreading the basement checks. And it wasn't just the humming. Sometimes when I opened the door, I'd catch the faint smell of antiseptic, mixed with something sour like old blood. Other times, I'd hear faint footsteps that didn't match my own. But the basement wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the elevator. There were 6 elevators in the hospital, but the one at the end of the West Wing never worked right. During the day, it was fine. At night, though, it would open on its own. I'd be walking past at 2 in the morning, and the doors would slide open with a chime, like it was inviting me in. The problem was, nobody had called it. The first time it happened, I figured maybe one of the nurses had pressed the button from another floor. But when I checked the panel, it showed the elevator hadn't been called. The doors just opened. Sometimes I'd walk away only to hear the doors close behind me, then open again a few seconds later. Once I swear I heard breathing inside. Heavy, ragged breathing, though when I shined my flashlight, the car was empty. I told my supervisor about it, but he just shrugged. "Old building," he said. "Elevators do weird shit." Maybe, but it got weirder. One night I was walking my usual route when I saw a figure step into the West Wing elevator. It was a woman, pale, wearing what looked like an old hospital gown. Her hair hung long and stringy, covering part of her face. I hurried toward her, calling out, "Ma'am, are you lost?" She didn't respond. She just stood in the elevator as the doors slowly slid shut. I ran, reaching the panel just in time to press the button, but the doors closed in my face. I watched the floor indicator above light up as the elevator descended to the basement. I took the stairs two at a time, my radio crackling as I tried to call it in. When I reached the basement, the elevator doors were already open. The car was empty. I searched everywhere. Records room, maintenance closets, even behind the boiler, but there was no sign of her. That night, I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Things only escalated after that. I started hearing things in the empty hallways, whispers just out of earshot, the squeak of shoes on tile floors. More than once, I thought I saw someone at the far end of a corridor, only for them to vanish when I blinked. But the encounter that still haunts me happened around 4 a.m. on a Tuesday. The hospital was dead quiet. Only a few nurses at the station. I was walking past pediatrics when I heard crying. It was faint, like a child sobbing. I followed the sound, heart hammering, until it led me to one of the empty patient rooms. The lights were off, the bed stripped, the monitor unplugged. Yet the crying continued, soft and pitiful. I pushed the door open slowly. The room was empty, but the crying didn't stop. It was coming from the corner, right where the shadows pooled. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice shaking. The crying cut off. Silence crashed over me, and then something stepped out of the shadows. It was small, about the size of a child, but wrong. Its limbs were too thin, its head too large. The face was pale, features blurred, like someone had tried to sculpt a human face out of wax and failed. It tilted its head at me. Making a wet, creaking sound, I stumbled back, slamming the door shut, my whole body shaking. When I opened the door again seconds later, the room was empty. After that night, I begged my supervisor to move me to the day shift. He refused. Said I was just tired imagining things, but I know what I saw. I lasted 2 more weeks before quitting. Couldn't take it anymore. To this day, I won't set foot in a hospital at night. And sometimes when I pass an elevator and hear the doors open behind me, I feel that same cold dread in my stomach. Because I know if I turn around, I might see her again, the pale woman in the gown, waiting for me to step inside. When I was 19, I got a job at a 24-hour gas station off the highway. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work and gave me some extra cash while I tried to figure out what to do with my life. My shift was the graveyard one, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., the one nobody else wanted. The station was small, one of those single-story concrete buildings with flickering fluorescent lights and humming refrigerators that never seemed to shut up. Out front were 4 pumps, the kind you had to prepay for, and behind the counter was a wall of cigarettes, scratch-offs, and cheap liquor bottles. Nights were usually dead. Maybe a trucker would come through for coffee, or a couple of teenagers would stop for snacks. But most of the time, it was just me, the hum of the coolers, and the occasional moth slamming itself into the buzzing lights outside. At first, I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. I'd listen to music, stock shelves, and sip coffee until the sun came up. But after a few weeks, the quiet stopped feeling peaceful. It started feeling heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on me. The first weird thing happened about a month in. It was around 2 a.m., and I was restocking the chips aisle when I heard the ding of the front doorbell. I straightened up, expecting a customer, but when I looked, the door was swinging shut and no one was there. I walked around the counter, checking outside. The lot was empty, just the pumps glinting under the sick yellow light. No cars, no people. I told myself maybe the wind had pushed it, even though the doors were heavy glass and never moved unless someone yanked them. A week later, it happened again. Ding. Door swinging. Empty lot. That time, I locked the door for the rest of my shift, but it didn't stop there. One night, I was sitting behind the counter, half dozing, when I heard footsteps. They were slow, dragging, coming from the snack aisle. I jolted upright, thinking I'd dozed off and missed someone walking in. "Hello?" I called. The footsteps stopped. I grabbed the baseball bat we kept under the counter and walked down the aisle. Nothing. Nobody. But some of the chip bags had been disturbed, like a hand had run across them. I didn't sleep well that morning. The worst part was the cameras. We had a basic 4-camera setup, 1 pointing at the counter, 1 at the pumps, and 2 covering the aisles. My manager never checked them, so I'd sometimes scroll through just to pass the time. One night, after hearing the door chime again, I rewound the footage. What I saw made my stomach twist. The camera showed the door swinging open just like I'd heard, but the space in front of it was wrong. The picture flickered like static, and for a second there was a shape. Not a person, not really. More like a smudge, tall and warped, standing just inside the threshold. Then it vanished and the door swung shut. I sat there staring, my hands trembling, replaying it over and over. I thought about telling my manager, but what would I even say? Things escalated after that. The bathroom in the back was for employees only, a single stall with a grimy sink. More than once I heard the toilet flush while I was alone. The first time I thought maybe someone had snuck in, but when I checked, the room was empty. The second time the lights in the bathroom were off, but the sink faucet was running. Then came the knocking. At first it was faint, 3 slow taps on the glass door at the front. I'd look up and see nothing but the reflection of the pumps. Then it got louder, sharper. Knock, knock, knock. I'd rush to the door, bat in hand, but there was never anyone there. By then, I was drinking 3 cups of coffee a night just to stay alert. Every sound made my nerves jolt. The breaking point came in early November. It was bitterly cold outside, frost coating the pumps, and the roads were empty. Around 3:30 a.m., I was behind the counter when the door chimed again. My stomach dropped. This time I didn't see the door move. The sound just echoed through the store. I stood up slowly, scanning the aisles. That's when I heard it, the soft shuffle of footsteps on linoleum moving between the shelves. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. No answer. The footsteps grew louder, closer, circling the aisles. I gripped the bat so hard my knuckles ached. Then from the corner of my eye I saw movement on the camera monitor. One of the aisle cameras showed a figure. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a long coat. Its head was bent at an impossible angle, tilted almost to its shoulder. I spun toward the aisle, but it was empty. When I looked back at the monitor, the figure was gone. That's when the lights went out, all at once. Every fluorescent in the building flickered and died, plunging the store into pitch black. The only light came from the faint glow of the monitors, and on those monitors, every camera now showed the same thing, the figure, standing closer with each flicker of static. I backed into the corner behind the counter, heart hammering, whispering, "Please, please, please." The air grew icy, my breath visible in the dark. Then the knocking started again, not from the front door this time, from the counter, right in front of me. Knock, 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 I lost it. I bolted through the back door, out into the freezing night, sprinting across the lot without looking back. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away, gasping, my lungs burning. I never went back. I called the manager the next morning and quit over the phone. Didn't even pick up my last paycheck. It's been years since then, but I still dream about it sometimes. I'll be standing behind that counter, staring at the monitors, and the static will start. The figure will appear closer and closer, until it's right there, face pressed against the glass of the camera. And when I wake up, I swear I can still hear it knock, 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 like it's waiting for me to come back.